Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Wednesday at about 11:32. Hope everyone's doing good. It's been a pretty active week here in at Film Fanatic headquarters. I got a whole bunch of new movies the last month or so, and then the last couple of weeks the last week and the week before, I had some really good hauls, really good movie hauls where I went to Bull Moose a couple times and went to a few other places. It was really great. I've been going to Bull Moose. I went to the Bull Moose. I usually go to the Bull Moose in Bangor, but I was in Waterville last week and went to the Bull Moose there. I got some cool movies there. I got some really good movies there. For the most part, I only go. My favorite place is the Bangor Bull Moose. For some reason, their whole selection for all things exploitation is just killer, just fabulous. The Waterville one used to be my favorite one, but I don't know what's going on. It's a different situation now. They As far as Blu-rays go, they have an amazing movie selection, just in general. But I for for the longest time I've been going there, have been going for the last few years, and I always usually pick up all kinds of amazing exploitation movies there, all kinds of horror, sex exploitation movies, you just all kinds of nasty movies, and I've gotten some amazing movies there. And then I noticed it was probably about 5 or 6 months ago that things were starting to dry up as far as that goes, as far as that genre, my favorite genre. They still have some, but kind of slim pickings. I don't know what happened. And then I started going to the Bangor one, and I noticed that their selection was really, really good. So I started going up there more. The thing that's different now about the Waterville Bull Moose is now they have this, which is cool, but I don't have 4K. I don't have a 4K player or a TV, and I don't think I'm going to go down that route. Maybe at some point, but it's just another added expense, and it just means I have to buy additional, multiple. I have to keep buying multiple copies of the same movies that I own. I'm really happy with a really good Blu-ray special edition. There is a difference, I think, in quality, but overall, I'm not sure. I'm on the fence as far as thinking that it is an improvement. So I don't know. 4K is incredible. I have seen some 4K releases. They're newer releases. They tend to be a little bit more expensive, but prices are coming down. But the one thing that was different about the Waterville Bull Moose is now they have a boutique section. They have all of the great boutique labels, Severin, Blue Underground, Mono Macabre, you name it. They have all of those great labels, Arrow, but they have tons of titles, but they're all 4K. They never had that before, and I thought that was wild. I don't know. And I was also in the Bull Moose in Brunswick, Maine recently. Also last week, we got some really killer movies there. They have a really good selection. That's a little further away. That's like an hour and a half away from here. But and the store owners, the people who work there, said that they were in the midst of putting together a boutique label section, like where it's going to be very specific, like have all the Arrow titles and have all the, Mondo Macabre titles, which is amazing. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, so today's show is on a movie, actually a set of movies that I bought. I got this at, I think it was in Bangor. I've kind of lost track. Yeah, I think it was in Bangor, and I got this really great selection or movie. It's a combo pack, and it's got two just incredible movies on it. Mary, Mary, Bloody Mary, which I did a show on yesterday. Check that review out. Both of these movies I've never seen before. The other movie, which I'm going to be talking about today, is Blood Feast. It was my first time viewing these movies. They are, it's just an amazing package. You have both movies, just re-released on Blu-ray, really great quality, and there's all kinds of really great special features on here. And these movies totally kick ass. My first time viewing, and Blood Feast was a movie that I think I was a little bit more familiar with. I had heard about it, but I, of course, Blood Feast for me is the classic Herschel Gordon Lewis movie, but that which is an older film. This is not under the same title to a degree, but this movie is a Mexican movie. There there was a an amazing period of in Mexico in the late 60s, 70s where there were so many great exploitation directors that were really active and putting out all kinds of great films. This originally Blood Feast was originally under the title Night of a Thousand Cats, and it came out in 1972. Um, and it's a it's an incredible movie. It was directed by Rene Cardona Jr. and it was released in 1972. Again, 90%, maybe more. I would say more than 90%. But at this point, most of the movies I'm covering and most of the movies that I just love and that movies that I go back to are from the 70s. I mean, you can't beat it. There's something so cool about the 70s. I don't know. It's like when you have certain movies, you know, like now I notice when I watch movies now, like say that came out in the 90s, or I should say, what I've been noticing now as far as newer horror films, a lot of newer films, a lot of these newer horror films that obviously are bigger Hollywood productions have this like there's been a few movies I saw recently, newer ones that have this like real 90s kind of feel to it, which is kind of funny when you think about it because it's not not all that long ago, about 20 years ago or so, but they have this very kind of glossy Hollywood kind of 90s feel where they seem to have this feel and look or aesthetic of movies that like I Know What You Did Last Summer or like the first Scream movie or the first few Scream movies directed by Wes Craven. And so they're kind of I don't know, they're like I like some of those films quite a bit, but again, they're dated, especially these newer films. It's kind of funny to me because I feel like but they're dated in kind of the wrong way, if that makes any sense. Like your typical 90s horror films had movies where the movies typically when they came out in the 90s, a lot of these horror films, they were kind of glossy, they were kind of pretty. All of the actors and actresses are all like pretty and they're all like kind of nice and kind of wholesome to a degree. There's not like when I think and a lot of the shots, the cinematography is really clean. The 90s has also appeared in horror where you had this thing that became known as kind of the jump scare where like you had this formulaic way that films were put together where they would have this jump scare where it was almost like like a paint by numbers kind of a thing where every film that came out during that period had at least 5 or 6 jump scares. And and one of the biggest problems that I had or that I have with a lot of those kinds of films is that it just feels so formulaic and it feels kind of corporate and it feels like there's not really a surprise and you can kind of see it coming a mile away. And jump scares, if you want to call it that, it wasn't really films, that term wasn't really used until about that period. But of course you go back to the 70s and 60s classic horror movies, you obviously had what would be later known as jump scares, but it feels like when I watch a movie from the 70s or in the 80s, horror films, and they have those kinds of jump scares, if you will, in them, they seem, for me, they feel organic. They don't feel like, it doesn't feel like there was some corporate executive sitting behind a desk, marking when that thing should happen. When I when I watch a movie from the 70s, a horror movie from the 70s, it feels like it's a natural thing, and it has it's very it's less predictable, and it doesn't feel to a degree forced. It's weird. And the thing that I love about the 70s is that, you know, not everybody's pretty. And it's got this grittiness to it, and and I like that it's dirtier. It's a little sleazier. It's a little bit more in the mud. It's a little bit, it's not polished. So, and this movie, Blood Feast, is, I think, a really great example of that. It was directed in 1972. I believe it was released in Mexico in 72, and then it was released in the United States in 74. But its initial release was in 72. And the thing is, like, this movie is, again, with like all of these great horror exploitation movies, there, it's so out of that time period. Like, it's just, oozes the 70s. But, and obviously it's to a degree it's dated, for that reason. But it totally works. It's not. It acts as like the film acts like Blood Feast acts as like a time capsule to this, glorious decade that was the 70s. And it so all of the things that normally, when things are dated, that don't work, in this in this, you know looking through it through this lens, it does work. It's really interesting. And this movie is like really weird. It's totally bizarro. It's super strange. It's really great, and it's it's again one of those cases of where it's so bad and terrible, but it's so great. All of those things that make it on paper, like, technically, if you were to look at Blood Feast and analyze it, from a technical standpoint, it kind of fails. It fails, on many fronts. Where the editing is pretty pretty bad. There's scenes of where the dialogue goes off the rails. Some of the acting is terrible, but the story is cool, and it's got this bizarre kind of rawness to it, that all of those qualities of where on paper technically you could dismiss it as just a piece of shit. I feel at the end of the day make this movie great, and give it this feeling of where it's just so entertaining. So it's always an interesting juxtaposition, and I'm always fascinated by that, those kinds of qualities that actually work in a context, when they clearly don't work in, say, your mainstream, if you're looking through it through a mainstream lens, they don't work. But in this context, in the exploitation world, it totally works. And I just think it's so awesome. And this movie's great. I'd never seen it before. It's got a really just bonkers ending. It's pretty sleazy. It's got some scenes in it that are just wrong and kind of terrible and kind of disturbing. It's essentially like, kind of this, about this crazed lunatic eccentric guy who, like, kills all of these women and then keeps their bodies as prizes, and there's this, and he feeds the leftovers or the remains of his victims to this to all of these cats that he owns, and it's just like totally crazy. There's some cannibalism in this movie, and the movie isn't necessarily super gory, but you totally get what's going on. You get what's being implied, and it's pretty, it's pretty fucked up that way. But yet, this movie is so cheesy, and there's some editing snafus throughout the movie where you're like, wait, what the hell is going on? But again, it's the case of like I've said many times, it's so bad it's good, and I just love these movies. They're just so freaking entertaining. If you want a good hour and a half to 2 hours of just pure escapism, this movie is for you. You know, there are so many great films coming out in Mexico in the 70s, and this movie is super entertaining. I totally loved it, so I can't recommend it enough. 1972 Blood Feast. Awesome movie. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.